Welcome to Wagner Live, our TV show featuring these two World War II survivors. They are here to tell you about the many causes of the Second World War, including the Treaty of Versailles, the Great Depression, and Germany's economy. Here we have Josh, one of the World War II survivors. Today he's going to be talking about the Great Depression.
One of the causes of World War II is the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a severe worldwide economic depression that took place during the 1930s. The timing of the Great Depression varied across nations. In most countries, it lasted from 1929 to 1930. Some 6,000 street vendors walked the streets of New York City in 1930 trying to sell apples for 5 cents each. Zippers were used more often because buttons became more and more expensive. Because of the circulation of money was so low, the US didn't mint nickels from 1932 to 1933. And by the 1940s, 2.5 million people had fled the Great Plains. 200,000 moved to California, and the stock market didn't return to pre-depression levels until 1954. Cities all around the world were hit hard, especially those dependent on heavy industry. Construction was virtually halted in many countries. Farming prices fell by about 60%, facing plummeting demand with few alternative sources of jobs. Areas dependent on primary sector industries, such as mining and logging, suffered the most. The American economy entered a mild recession during the summer of 1929 as consumer spending slowed and unsold goods began to pile up, which in turn slowed factory production. Nonetheless, stock prices continued to rise, and by the fall of that year had reached stratospheric levels that could not be justified by expected future earnings. The Great Depression had devastating effects in countries both rich and poor. Personal income, tax revenue, profits, and prices dropped. While international trade plunged by more than 50%, unemployment in the US rose to 25%, and in some countries rose as high as 33%.
The Treaty of Versailles was the most important of the peace treaties that brought World War I to an end. The treaty ended the state of war between Germany and the Allied powers. The German government signed the treaty under protest. Right-wing German parties attacked it as a betrayal, and terrorists assassinated several politicians whom they considered responsible. The treaty negotiated between January and June 1919 in Paris. World War I, 1919 in Paris, was written by the Allies with almost no participation by the Germans. The U.S. Senate refused to ratify the treaty, and the U.S. government took no responsibility for most of its provisions. The Treaty of Versailles helped cause World War II because when the treaty was signed, Germany had to pay for the damage done by Allies in World War I. When Germany heard of this, they refused to not agree at all, and the treaty was signed. After the treaty was signed, many people went unemployed because they had to pay for so much. Germany was desperate for a leader to fix their economy and end the Great Depression. And just like that, Hitler and the Nazi Party got the opportunity to take power and took it. Hitler is now in charge, and the man who hates Jews is now in charge of Germany. The Treaty of Versailles was the most important of the peace treaties that brought World War I to an end. The treaty ended the state of war between Germany and the Allied powers. The Treaty of Versailles helped cause World War II because when the treaty was signed, Germany had to pay for the damages done by Allies in World War I. When Germany heard of this, they were furious to not agree at all. After the treaty was signed, many people went unemployed because they had to pay so much. Germany was desperate for a leader to fix their economy and end the Great Depression. And just like that, Hitler and the Nazi Party got the opportunity to take power and took it. Hitler is now in charge. The man who hates Jews is now in power of Germany. The Treaty of Versailles, which formed the core of the peace settlement after World War I, was signed on June 28, 1919. Outside the German delegation, it was signed by two countries of the initial triple intent that had gone to war against Germany in August 1914. France and the United Kingdom, the third one, Russia, having already signed a separate treaty of the Brest-Litovsk on March 3, 1918. And by a number of nations that had joined them at larger stages in the war, the major ones being Italy, Japan, and the United States in 1917. This widely different experience of the war explains why the unity of purpose was so difficult to achieve among the Allies during the peace conference that opened in Paris on January 18, 1919.
Josh is back to talk about Germany's economy.
The Nazis came to power in the midst of the Great Depression. Hitler appointed Jamar Chott, a former member of the German Democratic Party, as president of the Reichsbank in 1933 and Minister of Economics in 1934. Hitler used Jews as a scapegoat for all of Germany's problems. With disproportional numbers of wealthy Jewish business owners, Hitler convinced much of Germany that the Jews were to blame for the poor economic state. Germany spent $272 billion in 1945, and Hitler hated the Jews leading up to the Holocaust because he believed that the Jewish financiers were responsible for sending the world into its First World War, causing the deaths of over 100,000 German soldiers.
Thank you, Josh and John, for sharing your interesting stories. Tune in next week to look at Wachenry Live.
That's it.